Today I want to showcase how the alt-right uses information to mislead people about the Holocaust. This video series is not really meant to debunk the individual claims, but to expose how they want to manipulate you with misinformation and lies. The claim I'm using to show this is that the extermination camp Auschwitz had a swimming pool. Here is Mike Enoch, a prominent alt-righter, talking about this.
Right?
Auschwitz. You think of Auschwitz,
the
but
thing
that
to keep in mind, though.
That was a
Auschwitz had a nice orchestra.
Yeah,
and soccer team.
They had a pool. They had a gym. They had a symphony orchestra. I mean, there's Mexicans in America that would kill for those living conditions. I mean, come on.
So this clip is really good to showcase how Holocaust deniers work. They throw out small details, half-truths or outright lies, and don't provide any historical context to evoke skepticism of historical fact. And it worked pretty good on Andy if you ask me. With pointing out that Auschwitz had a swimming pool or a soccer field or a daycare, which is true by the way, they want to showcase a contradiction in what they see as the official story. Why would a place of extermination have something like a swimming pool or a soccer field? And their goal is also to trick people into being more open to arguments, since the average person doesn't really know how to connect the two facts that Auschwitz had a swimming pool, but was also a place where over 1 million people got killed. First of all, I will show you how to do that. Let's look at the historical facts. What a lot of people don't seem to know is that when historians talk about Auschwitz, they don't talk about one camp, usually. The Auschwitz camp complex had several camps with different purposes. There was Auschwitz I Stammlager, which was a regular concentration camp like Dachau or the Emsland camps, meaning it was a place to imprison political dissidents, criminals or racial opponents and to exploit their labor while killing some of them. Auschwitz II Birkenau was both a place for slave labor and the large-scale killing of people as soon as they arrived there, with only a few people being left alive so they could work themselves to death or to be executed once they had outlived their usefulness. Auschwitz III Monowitz was a camp built for the purpose of setting up a factory for the IG Farben. Here the inmates had to work under inhumane conditions to produce synthetic rubber. And besides these three, Auschwitz had about 50 subcamps to produce ammunition, to mine coal or for other purposes. Auschwitz is not just a picture you see in a lot of school history books. It was a huge site with tens of thousands of forced workers, of which not all were Jewish and therefore treated differently. So when people talk about the extermination at Auschwitz, they mainly talk about Auschwitz II Birkenau, although large killings also took place in other parts of the camps, but not nearly on the scale of in Birkenau. Now that we established that, let's talk about the swimming pool. The swimming pool was built in 1944 in Auschwitz I Stammlager as a water reservoir, and the function as a swimming pool was only the secondary purpose. It was mostly built for firefighting since there were no hydrants in the camps. The pool was mainly used by SS personnel, but also by privileged Aryan inmates as a reward for acting complicit in the camp system. This was actually a big part of how the camp was run. The SS used certain groups of inmates, mainly Germans, as their henchmen and granted access to the pool or the brothel as a sort of carrot on a stick, if you will. Auschwitz I Stammlager actually did have a lot of recreational activities for the SS personnel to keep them happy while performing the mass extermination of Jews and Roma. In an article by historian Ernst Klee titled "How German Artists Kept Their Compatriots in a Good Mood While They Were Busy Murdering," he explains how the cultural activities were handled inside the camps. Klee's research shows that at least several hundred actors, musicians, singers and writers took part in artistic events at Auschwitz during the years when the camps were in operation. Do murderers not like to swim, read or go to the theater? This is in no way contradictory to the large-scale killing they performed on a daily basis. And the people performing these horrendous acts saw what they were doing as their job. Outside of their job, they were mostly normal people. They would get up in the morning, read the newspaper, drink their coffee and then go on to butcher innocent people, including children, as their daily task. And after that, they would go home to eat dinner with their families or maybe read their children a bedtime story. And for the guards, Auschwitz I Stammlager was, to quote the former bookkeeper of Auschwitz, Oskar Gröning, like a little town. It had its rumors, little stores and a daycare for the children of SS personnel. For them, Auschwitz was a great place to work at and it came with a lot of benefits. Like for instance having house personnel to do your cooking and cleaning, which were mainly female Jehovah's Witnesses. A lot of people who worked at the camp as guards and their families were granted luxuries which they otherwise couldn't have afforded. Several diaries and letters from people working at Auschwitz remark how wonderful the job and the life is there. despite the constant smell of burning human flesh from Auschwitz to Birkenau. To truly understand how this and the unprecedented scale of mass extermination go together, it is important to contextualize the information we have to get a truthful understanding of what happened during the Holocaust. Unlike deniers who purposefully leave out context or misconstrue information to serve their nefarious and bigoted agenda. And here the dishonesty of people like Mike Enoch truly show. They mention the orchestra, for instance, but they don't mention that Rudolf Höss, who was part-time head of the camp administration, once had half the orchestra executed because he didn't like the interpretation of his favorite marches. To sum this up, and this is loosely taken from the Irving vs. Lipstadt trial, the presence of the swimming pool in the Auschwitz Stammlager does not say anything about the conditions for Jewish inmates in Auschwitz, and does not challenge the existence of an extermination program in Auschwitz to Birkenau. And to make the claim that because anywhere in the entire camp complex something happened that is not part of the extermination process, the whole Holocaust did not happen, is not only ridiculous, but immediately demonstrates the irrational approach to this topic. Even Mike Enoch contradicts himself later in the video. First he mentions the swimming pool to hint at that Auschwitz was actually a rather benign place, but then later he makes the claim that since all the evidence for the mass extermination in the death camps was found by the Soviets, which is actually not true by the way, it is likely to have been tampered with. So in his mind, the Soviets placed all the evidence that lines up with the statements by former guards and inmates, but just left the swimming pool where it was. Yeah. I don't have any illusions about convincing someone who denies the Holocaust ever happened with these videos, since you can't rationally argue someone out of an irrational belief. If you debunk the swimming pool thing, they ask about the soccer games at Auschwitz. And if you explain how those were actually British POWs from another camp who played for the entertainment of the SS, they will ask about something else. And they rarely, if ever, mention something else in Auschwitz. Although only a fraction of people who were killed in the Holocaust died there. What about the people getting executed or starving in the ghettos? What about the people who died in one of more than 1,000 concentration camps, or the ones executed by the Einsatzgruppen? In the words of Winston Churchill, a fanatic is someone who can't change his mind and who won't change the subject. That's it for today's topic, guys, and thanks for watching. If you want to stay around to hear me rambling a bit, feel free to do so. I thought a while about actually making a video on this. On the one hand, I'm not gonna convince a Holocaust denier no matter how many of these videos I make. On the other hand, here's Mike Enoch spewing his propaganda with thousands of people watching and Andy Warski going like, yeah, I never heard about this, let's set up a debate. Which proves how fucking dire the whole situation is. A debate with a full-blown Holocaust denier usually is pretty pointless. It's like arguing with a religious fanatic or someone who believes Elvis is still alive. If I would debate one of these people, I may be able to debunk most of their claims, but if only one claim stands uncontested, the debate ends in favor of the denier position. There really is little, if anything, to gain from engaging these people. But since the internet exists, it's now possible for lies to appear just as legitimate as facts. The way Holocaust deniers think, and with that I mean the extreme right and also Muslim extremists, is not rational. They have to believe what they believe because it's a cornerstone in their warped worldview. This video is meant to test the waters a bit, if you will, to get a bit of your feedback on this and your opinion if these videos are actually worth it. I would also have to consider my channel getting banned in Europe for engaging this topic at all. There's also the question of how to handle the comment section for these kinds of videos. I will keep an eye on the section for now and then act accordingly, but it's probably gonna end up heavily moderated. Well, we'll see, I guess. If you stayed around, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, and you can also try to catch me on Twitter. Special thanks go out to user Commie Space Invader from the Ask Historian subreddit. In this video I quoted him in a few places and I urge you to check out his full explanation. The link is in the description. Until next time guys, have a good one.